Today, we're super excited to have Glenis join us because she's an Owners Club member, awesome sister in Christ, which is such an inspiring story. She's also a senior public adjuster with 37 years experience. Glenis, welcome. Thank you for your time. How are you doing today?
I am doing great, excited, Joshua. Thank you for having me. Such an honor.
Awesome. Just super excited to share what you've been sharing with me. The ways you're helping families are amazing. So first, Glenis, can you quickly introduce yourself and explain what you do in simple terms for someone who just lost their home in a fire?
Sure. So, first of all, I'm Glenis, and I am a mom, a wife, and a proud grandmother of 7. That's first and foremost my most delicious work. And then after that, I am a senior public insurance adjuster. It's what I've done for almost 4 decades now, and such a blessing to be able to help families recover right after a disaster. In simple terms, I work for the homeowner, not the insurance company. And what I do specifically is I make sure that families receive every dollar that's inside their policy so that they can rebuild their lives and their homes.
That's awesome. You've been an insurance adjuster for 37 years. What made you specialize in disaster and fire victims?
I have my own personal struggles with insurance companies right before I joined the industry, and I had a claim denied. Fire, I specifically have helped 95% of my families are fire survivors. And I specifically got into that side of the business is because it's the biggest gap in insurance settlements. I watch so many families accept just settlements they thought were fair, only to realize later on that no, they didn't have enough money to rebuild. Once I saw that pattern, I made it my mission to stand in that gap for fire survivors because they are, to me, I believe they're the most vulnerable people right after a claim, specifically those that suffer a total loss. One thing is to have a kitchen fire. Now that doesn't disrupt a life, but when you lose everything, like the LA fire families, when you are just left with land, it's pretty devastating.
Yeah, I mean, your home is such a security. You usually lose all your belongings or most of it. And like you said, they're just so vulnerable. On average, how much more do homeowners usually recover with a public adjuster?
So every claim is totally different, right? So it depends what claim you're looking at. For me, on a specific basis, I predominantly work total loss disasters. It could be anywhere. The average of the claims that I handle, what I usually recover is somewhere between 250,000 and 500,000. It could be more, but that's usually the average because that's the entire category of most of the homeowners in the areas I have worked so far. The Eaton fire specifically, that will be the average. Like the Paradise fire that I worked, that was the average. LNU, CCU is those average homes. I'm about to find out what's going to happen in Palisades because I come in later on when people actually need me as a public adjuster more so.
Total loss is exactly the type of people we're trying to help in Altadena and Palisades and Malibu, like you mentioned. And that's amazing that you're getting $250,000 to $500,000 to help these homeowners, whether they want to buy a new home or rebuild and refinance. So that's amazing. Who should specifically not wait to have their policy reviewed after a fire?
I would think anyone with a total loss, because a near total loss, anyone rebuilding in a high code area or anyone who feels rushed. If you feel rushed by the insurance company, if you're confused, if you're unsure about what the policy actually covers, you should not wait.
What is the biggest mistake fire victims make at the beginning?
At the beginning of the claim, what I see is families, I hate this word. They say, my adjuster. They totally trust the insurance company. They automatically think that they're on their side. And an insurance company, remember, they write the contract. It is a contract. That policy becomes a two-party contract between you and the insurance company. So that contract, whatever they promise on that contract, if you don't understand the contract, money gets gets left on the table for you and your family.
And why are claims underpaid even when people think things are going fine?
Because adjusters, they work on templates, right? They work on averages. They don't really know how a certain home was built. They don't understand the in and outs. We all have different homes and what that city requires. So we utilize what is called Exactimate. And Exactimate is their estimating system, right? To actually do the scope of work on the dwelling. And if you plug in the wrong city and you just think there's a cookie cutter and you're only going to pay, as an example, what you pay in this side of town versus what this house is, you can be leaving hundreds of thousands of dollars on the table. So the homeowner not understanding what it actually costs to rebuild, and that adjuster, remember, when you have an entire town where there's hundreds, there's thousands of claims that are happening all at the same time, you usually have a cat adjuster, a catastrophe adjuster that's working that claim. And you may get, during that time, you may get 6, 7 adjusters. And if you don't understand what your policy holds, by the time you explain it to this guy, they already switched that adjuster. And if that guy is totally different and you don't have things in writing and you don't know what you're entitled to, it becomes overwhelming, where a family is already going through so much emotionally, and then it becomes a financial problem as well.
What parts of the fire claim are often missed most?
What I see is on personal property. So specifically, I'll speak about Paradise. You had a retirement community. At that point, the worst fire that California ever had. You had an 87-year-old grandma. She could have been my grandma. She thought, I was paid $200,000 in personal property. That's plenty of money. I'm good. Well, no, if you had a policy that was $400,000 and the insurance company came in and wrote you a check to make you feel like you're made whole, they haven't paid all of your money. So on personal property, people do not want to go through the stress that it takes to do an inventory. It's kind of reliving everything all over again for them. And a lot of families, they hear their friends that say, hey, we did the inventory and actually we only got 10,000, or the insurance company said, we have to give back 20,000. They hear the stories and they're like, no, I'm good. So I see a lot of money be left that is left over on personal property, but then also on extended replacement cost and code upgrades. Money is left over on the table for that. There's also money for, they pay for the cleanup, right? FEMA came in and they did the cleanup. Well, there's also money that they owe on the cleanup, on the personal property side of it, that the insurance company, they're not going to tell you. The burden of proof is on you, the insured. It's up to you and I to actually tell them what they owe us. They pay a settlement, and if we do not know that policy, a lot of money gets left on the table on those particular endorsements.
There's a family in Altadena where you helped them get an extra $563,000 more. Tell us about that story.
This is what happened. So originally, they were offered a settlement that looked, I would say, what my client said, it looked reasonable. It looked like there was enough money, I was paid enough money, and I was fine. But they didn't reflect the current rebuild cost, code upgrades, what the city requires now, and the true value of their personal property. Again, going back to that example, if someone has lived there 30, 40 years, they think, I bought this stuff, my personal property, it's good enough. Maybe you bought the bedroom set 20 years ago and it was 5,000. Well, that same bedroom set may be 10,000 today. So they don't think about the costs of today. So what happened with that particular family, after I said, look, I just want to do a free valuation of your claim, which is really how I start. I want to see what your policy says, because to us, brother, and I hope I don't offend anybody, but to us, that's the Bible. The policy is the truth. What is it that you're covered for? When I want to be able to know what to do in this area of my life, in this area, I look at the Bible, I look at the truth. So the policy is what the truth is. How much do I have in dwelling? how much is my extended replacement cost, and it depends. Every insurance company has a different endorsement. As an example, AAA has 50% on extended replacement cost, where Farmers may be 25%. You have Allstate that's 50%. It depends. There are some policies that have 100% of extended replacement cost. So when we looked at all the documentation, what they were paid, their settlement statement, that's what I asked for, the policy and the settlement statement. And then I compare the two and I say, okay, this is what you have, this is what was paid, and this is what they owe you. These are the ways that you can go about getting these funds. But it is a lot of work, and it takes an expert to be able to walk through with them to be able to get them those funds. And I said to the family, to this particular man, I said, look, I believe that I am able to get you at least $400,000. And he said, girl, if you give me 100,000, I'll be happy. And I said, no, we're not going to settle for that, because he was older. I said, this is what your policy has. I'm going to push for these things. And it depends, right? Code upgrades, it depends on what's in the plan, what the city's going to require. And I said, but from knowing the code that we're following now, which is the 2022 code, right? I believe that this is going to be the cost for these things. And I can guarantee, and I don't like saying guarantee, but I could see where he was unpaid on the personal property, or he was not paid enough on extended replacement costs, and what the code were going to be. I could not do all the math on everything the city was going to require, but once the plans were approved, once it was all said and done, then we were able to recover $563,000. And that man is a very happy man. He's like, wow, girl, you're it. Really excited. He's taking his wife and his family on a Disney cruise. He said, I could never afford it. After we rebuild the house, we're going to all go on vacation with all the grandkids. And to me, that's what I show up and work for. I love that.
Wow, that's awesome. Praise God for that, and great job. And you really made an impact, in their family. And besides not being able to go on the cruise, what would have happened if they accepted the first offer?
So this is the problem, and this is what's happening to a lot of families, specifically in Altadena. They accept the total loss payment. They take that payment in the beginning. The insurance company comes out, pays that. But then the contractor, they get into a contract with the contractor, and the contractor says, I'm going to put the house back for that amount, which is the total payment, the dwelling. But when the city says you need to bring the electrical up to code, you need to bring the plumbing up to code, you need to put fire sprinklers, you need to bring the mechanical, everything that's part of a trade, all the framing, all the trusses, you need to now come in and do these things that are hundreds of thousands of dollars. You don't have enough. So families have to go out and borrow funds to be able to finish rebuilding. So it is best that we look at the policy, we look at what is there so that people have the most. And I'm not saying that every family has enough, but that contractor, first, he's not a negotiator. He does not know how to get that money out of the insurance company. Even if he knows how to charge, you have to quote the code for every one of that payment. You have to actually go back to the policy, and there is a certain way that you actually submit that documentation to be able to recover specifically on law and ordinance or code upgrades. It is the only part of the policy that's called an incurred cost. You have to spend it, or you have to show the insurance company that you have to spend those funds and that you have an agreement. And then you need to be able to do it in a specific way per the policy to be able to recover those funds. And that's the work that we as public insurance adjusters, we do.
That's awesome. What is the biggest myth fire victims believe about hiring a public adjuster?
I would say that it is too late. That's the biggest myth. I also hear them say, it's going to cost me money. They're going to take a percentage of my claim. It's like, okay, the insurance company hired an expert to represent them. We need to bring the balance back to adjusting. It's an investment to be able to get you more money out of your settlement. That's the biggest myth. People think it's too late, and it's not too late. It is, people say, well, it's a year, or I already accepted the settlement. No, when you actually cash that check, you're not signing a release. There's not a release that is being signed because you took the policy limits on dwelling and you cashed that check. You still have these endorsements that are part of your policy that we can recover for you and your family to be able to utilize to do the construction.
Gotcha. And as far as timing, I believe there's like a 24-month window, right, for most insurance companies to get their benefits. But then for Altadena and the other fires, it's been over a year. So I think time is really important because also claims take, I think, 3 to 6 months on average or even longer. So talk about that. Is there kind of a window that's closing for some of these fire victims?
Yeah, so the state of California says specifically that you have 36 months from the first ACV payment, which is the actual cash value payment. You already have 12 months that went by since that payment. The fires happened in January. They paid policy limit on the dwelling, usually in that first 30 days. So I'm going to assume that most companies did the right thing. So they have about 24 months. The biggest thing, I believe, the reason why you hire an expert to make sure you get your money right away is so that you don't stop the work. They also have a risk on losing and not having enough money on additional living expense. As an example, if you had limits of 50,000, maybe 75,000, well, between renting a house for a year and then renting furniture, that money is about to go away. And it's better to hire someone sooner than later so you can recover the money that's on your policy so that you're able to rebuild.
When is the best time to hire a public adjuster?
Immediately. I tell families the reason why public adjusters come right after a fire is not because we are insensitive. We want to make sure that your claim is ran the right way. But the best, it's kind of like that saying, when is the best time to plant a tree? 10 years ago. But then when is the second best time is today? The same with adjusting. If you have not hired someone and you had a claim and you're within that guideline of limits, it is best that you hire someone right away. You are able to focus on what's important. Understand that, yes, hiring an expert, you should do it right away because it will bring peace of mind. For a lot of these homeowners, this is the biggest investment that they have ever made. They have never even looked at their policy until after the claim. They don't understand the policy, but then it's very stressful. What happens with the families from the Eaton fire, from Palisades, is that when you have a claim, it's just you have your family, you have your church, you have everybody that's coming alongside you to support you. When you have an entire community that was affected by a disaster like this, it's very difficult because your church now burned down, your cousin, your grandma's house, everybody's in the same situation, and the support that you may have when you have just a home fire is totally different. It's better to hire an expert to handle the adjusting, the negotiations of your claim so you can focus on helping heal and rebuild your family.
Those are very good points. I didn't even think about. Is it too late to hire an adjuster if someone already started their claim?
No, some of the largest recoveries that we have is after they have gotten in a disaster like this one, like the Eaton fires, like the Palisades. We are able to do more for that policyholder. I tell people, I feel in total integrity. Some people say, oh, you're a fire chaser. And I say, I am. I have no problems with that title because I know what I bring to the table. Specifically, there's very few public adjusters that do what I do. I come in now and I come alongside, and I know that what I am collecting for those homeowners, I know they cannot get it on their own, because if they were going to get it, the insurance company will have paid it. The insurance company, a year has already passed. If they were going to pay that money, they would have paid it. Now it's a negotiating. Now it's a real fight, and they may not have the tools to be able to recover the rest of their funds.
Yeah, I like what you said, that you can do what a lot of other people can't do. So even if someone hired another public adjuster, maybe they're less experienced or maybe they're less knowledgeable, they're still going to leave money on the table. So talk about that. What's the difference between someone like you versus maybe just an average or below average public adjuster?
The best way that I can explain it is there is a foot doctor and then there's an eye doctor. They're both doctors. Unless you specialize in doing fires, it's very difficult if what you have specialized in is water or hurricane or something else. Not only 95% of my clients are fire survivors. I literally had a company that was called Fire Pro Inc. That was the name of my construction company when I first started. I did mitigation. I used to own a company like Serpro, like Service Master, on the side of the insurance company, right back in the 80s. And that was the name of my company. I did a lot of work for insurance companies as a preferred vendor. In 1991, I became a Christian, and that's what changed everything for me. I say I came on the good side. When you work for the insurance company, you represent the interests of the insurance company. And I had an argument with an adjuster. Her name was Vicky, that gave me, I would say, 90% of all my work. And she wanted me to write a roof that had to be replaced. She wanted me to repair that roof. And it was like, I'm not doing it. I became a Christian. I'm not doing that. I'm going to write it the way I see it. And that's that. And she's like, you forgot who pays your paycheck. And I said, well, the last time I checked, the one that now pays my paycheck is God. And she's like, we'll see about that. And it was like, I knew I was not going to get any work from her. And I didn't. So I went to my pastors and I said, well, I hope that God thing I was a brand new Christian, that it works for finances. I know it worked in my own personal life. I was an addict and said a simple prayer. Jesus came into my life and everything was changed. And one of my companies in Florida is called Your Recovery Team. I say Your Recovery is my ministry and it's also my work. But definitely after you decide to start helping families, you need to pick your lane. What is it that I'm going to focus on? And what I had done up to then was mitigation for fire survivors. And I just stayed in that same line of work. I went after families that have fires to help them because that's what I knew. I'm 61. I started in this line of work in 1988. I did not know, I did not have the experience when I became a public adjuster to do anything else. And I'm glad, because I stayed focused on fires. It's not that I have not done other types of claims. I have worked earthquakes, I have worked hurricanes, but 95% of my clients have been fire survivors. And the difference between myself, the reason why a lot of families hire me is because I have the experience in fire, but also I have done every trade of the work. I was a contractor, so I know how to write a contract. I know what I need to look for in that contract. Understand that, yes, we can get someone all of the money, but if the contract is not done right with a contractor, it can put them in a really difficult place. So I am not a construction attorney, but I tell my clients, if you want me to review it, I will review it gladly. And I help them in that respect. I have done that when it's a partial loss after a fire. I know why that TV that may look just fine, why it needs to be paid as a total loss. And simply, it just, you cannot cannot take a TV apart and clean it and then give it a warranty. You can't. So you learn certain things when you do mitigation, specifically when you do fires. I just said, I'm just going to stay helping families. People think that there's not fires every day. There's fires every single day. You may not hear about them, but there is fires. Families have fires on a daily basis in every county in our country. I know that because we get all the calls, but then they hear about the disaster, the major disasters. And after so many years of helping families, I said, I'm going to focus on communities that have disasters. Because yes, I am able to negotiate, but it becomes ministry because those families need prayer, they need support, they don't know what to do. I tell husbands, she may cry 1 minute and you need to be the man, and the other way around, because it just is something that disrupts the entire family. And when you have children, it's even worse. I tell my clients, you know what? You have to learn to dream and imagine with your children. You have to say, you know what? Yes, we lost the house. We did, but now we're going to rebuild the house the way that we always wanted it. Take them to Home Depot, show them colors, show them tile, allow them to dream, allow them to be process of that beautiful rebuilding process as a family, because that's what's going to bring you together and that's what's going to help you heal.
I love that. The reason you're helping families get a lot more money than other people is because you only specialize and you've been specializing for decades in fire insurance claims. While they hire just any adjuster, they may or may not specialize. They likely won't be as experienced as you and just only focus on fire like you. But the second thing that I love was how you're turning something that's so traumatic, such a horrible experience. If they have the money to rebuild, which thanks to you, you help them get enough money to rebuild, then they can turn that into a positive experience because now they can, like you said, as a family dream and hey, we lost the house. That was tough. But guess what, guys? The bright side is we get to rebuild a new house just the way we like it. We get to pick out all the colors. We can do it together, make it a whole family experience. So I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah. And imagine, Josh, a family, imagine your grandparents going through something like this. I know for my parents, their home, it's an older home. My parents do not have the finances to do all the things that that house needs. You understand?
Yeah.
A lot of, with my parents, it's a little bit different, I should say, because anything they need, they just still think I'm a contractor. Glenis, we need a plumber. Glenis, that happened. And so I should not say my parents because they have, my mom says she never picks up a hammer, but she knows all the people that do. And my dad, he says, my daughter, I'm about to curse, brother. This is my one curse word, but my dad says, my daughter, she's a badass. I'll put her against any of those GCs. So it's really
That's awesome.
yeah, but older families, older people, they do not have a lot of them. When it's an older couple, I do say to them, listen, you probably needed a new roof. Oh, yeah, and I could not afford it. Rewire, you needed to fix the AC, all these things. And if we look at the good, I know that it's there. Somehow, some way we can find it. Even in Paradise, there was a young man that he was caught in the fire. And I don't know if you know much about Paradise, but these people lived in the mountains and 86 people passed during that fire. And as he's telling me the story of everything he went through and all the people that he literally saw die, he said, but I saved this guy and I saved that guy. And I said, but John, can we celebrate those lives? It's hard. It's hard. I'm not going to tell you it's all roses and sunshine, but when you go through what these families are going through, we have to take and grab from anywhere we can to be able to place hope and put hope back in their heart because that's what they need. And I believe that a lot of them, when the insurance companies are not doing the right thing, they feel hopeless and they feel like I can't even rebuild my house. I can't even go back. I have a lady that had moved to another state and she went to another state to buy a home. She was not going to rebuild because she thought she did not have enough money to rebuild. And once we were able to do that evaluation of her claim, there was enough money. She said, I'm telling my kids that I hate Kansas. I'm
Wow.
going back to California. I'm not going to buy a home here. And she was so happy. She said, I went to this community and I have been there 40 years. I want to die in my home. And now you're saying I have the money to go back home. I love my kids. I love my grandkids, but I have arthritis, Glennis. This is not good for me. I can tell you one story after another, good, sad, and bad. I love what I do. I love advocating for people. I love giving them hope. And I believe that if you buy insurance, you and I are homeowners, we buy insurance. We want the insurance company not to pay us more. We're not looking for more. They're not going to pay us what's not in that policy. But can you please, after I lost everything, can you pay me what's in my policy?
Mm.
That's all I'm asking. And that's why the Department of Insurance licenses people like myself to make sure the policyholders get paid everything that was promised to them in that two-party contract that's called a policy.
Wow, that's such a powerful story you shared. So like she had to leave and move from California to Kansas, which is a big culture thing. Everything changed our weather. I grew up in Southern California, San Diego, and then LA. So it's like, yeah, I don't ever want to move anywhere else, even though we have challenges here, price, standard of living. But I mean, you really like impacted that person's life. And can you tell me another story? I mean, you say the other story. I think the stories are so powerful. So we'd love to hear another one or two stories if you don't mind sharing.
No, I don't. I had a pastor and we've been friends now. His home burned in 1993 and he had farmers. I'll never forget his story because he's my friend, Pastor Nino. He said to me, Sister, what I would love, if I can have enough money to be able to put my house back and then do a mother-in-law's quarter. I love my in-laws. They're in the ministry with me, but I would really love to have my privacy. And I laugh every time I think of that story because he could not see himself having that money to be able to build his house and do the what we would call today an ADU.
Mm.
And that's exactly what we were able to do. That home is still there. 8312 Grape Street is in LA. Bernardino Cabral is his name. And years later, I just saw him about a year ago. I'd gone to his house. He said, How can I not? My clients say, How can I not continue the relationship? You were there when we were at our worst. For a woman having a fire is a whirlwind. It's like everything that she considers safety and security is no longer there. And the things not necessarily that are connected to finances are important to that woman, not necessarily. But
Mm.
she wants to know that there is certainty that somebody that's on her side is there to support, is there to actually fight, is there to advocate for her. A guy is totally different. A guy wants to make sure that he gets all his money. It's usually 95% of the times, it's usually that way. The man wants to get everything that he has on that policy. The woman wants her home back and she wants her family at peace. And I believe that that's what we come alongside them and do. I'm excited about being able to help these families. A lot of them, unfortunately, were underinsured. But can we get them all the money that's there so that maybe they don't have to borrow as much? I have a client right now that he said to me, Glenis, I need your help. I really do need your help. And I said, You're going to get policy limit. And he said, I don't know what to do. And I need help through the claim. My family is all over the place. And I took on his claim and he says to me, Glenis, you see, this is why I hired you. He's doing a video for me. I spoke with him earlier. Elmer is his name. He is the only home on his block that is in the framing process. The
Wow.
only one. Everybody's lot is still level if the cleanup was done, but nobody has started construction. His plans were approved and he's already in the framing. They're doing sprinklers yesterday. I just sent all the paperwork for his code upgrades. And yes, he did not have enough money to hire a contractor and not come out of pocket. But his settlement, all the limits were paid, all the extended replacement was paid, all the code upgrades were paid, all his personal property was paid, and it was all done. I had all of his funds in about 90 days. The first check, obviously, in the first 30 days, but all his personal property money came right away. And then also, he has his funds for his additional living expense. He says, "You don't understand, Glenis. This is peace. The fee that I'm paying you for me is worth it because my wife is at peace. It took the emotions out of having this claim, and we got all the money. We would have never known that there was more money in our policy. And he is going to have to get a loan. He is, but he's not going to run out of additional living expense. And the reason why he's getting a loan is because he chose to pay off his mortgage. That's what he chose. That's what he wanted to do. Another myth that is very important that doesn't really relate to the insurance company, but to the mortgage company. Mortgage companies make people think that they have to pay it off because their name is on the check. You do not have to pay off the mortgage. You can continue to make payments and keep your loan. If you owe 300,000-400,000 and you pay that, of course you're not going to have enough money to rebuild. And then you're going to go out and get a loan for even higher. It makes no sense. So don't do that. Just continue to make your payment. Yes, they're going to put your money in escrow. Yes, they're probably going to pay you a third to start, a third 50%, and a third at the end. That's fine. But you will have your funds to be able to take your home back to 100%. That's my advice.
Awesome. Glenis, why are you partnering with us in this Rebuild Altadena initiative?
It's simple for me. Rebuilding only works when financing and insurance recovery and construction is aligned. Without enough insurance money, families are forced into bad financial decisions. It's a good alignment because I am able to recover the rest of the funds that's inside the policy. I'm able to recover on extended replacement cost. I'm able to recover on code upgrades. I'm able to recover the rest of the funds on personal property so that the homeowner is able to rebuild and have the funds to be able to have your group help them rebuild.
Awesome. So thank you, Glenis, again, for taking your valuable time to share your wisdom and expertise with these families who need it so much. And thank you so much for partnering with us. We're so blessed and honored to have somebody like you, just a specialist, but also someone who is of the faith and just really genuinely cares about people. So before I let you go, first of all, two things. One, where can people find you and what's the best way to reach out to you?
Thank you so much, Josh, for having me. It's been my honor and my privilege to be able to come alongside and help these families that need help. They can just reach out to me through Instagram. My handle is Glenis Hargreaves.
Awesome. And we'll make sure we put that in the description below, but it's just basically your name all spelled out. Last question is, any last advice that you want to share with people?
I want to tell people it's not too late. Make sure that you reach out for a free valuation of your claim. It doesn't cost anything to have an expert take a look at your policy, make sure that you are paid everything that that policy promises. I would be honored to come alongside your family and just help you in discovering what is left on your claim. That is the most important thing because before you know it, the deadline is up. And after the deadline is up, there's nothing that I can do to help you recover.
That's a great point, guys. I mean, you have nothing to lose, free review, and you want to have the Michael Jordan, the badass insurance adjuster to look at your claims. Make sure there's no money left on the table because we so empathize. We're sorry that you've gone through so much. And the last thing you want is just to add to that hardship by not taking the money that you already paid for and are entitled to. So thank you again, Glenis. God bless you, sister. We appreciate all that you do.
Thank you so much, brother. Thank you for having me.